This video is going to uncover and show you what CNN is never going to show you, what MSNBC is never going to tell you, what NPR will never touch. A dark secret that's crucial for you to know. It's behind everything that's happening now, shaking our colleges, our culture, our world. Stay tuned to the end so you don't miss what is going to be opened up. And I promise you, they will never tell you this. They'll keep hidden what they know. And we're going to open up what they don't know, the other realm that's behind it all. This is Jonathan Cahn. And first, three things. Number one, if you're not already getting this, to not miss the prophetic messages that I'm going to post here, hit subscribe. Number two, send this video to those in your life who need to see it and know it. Number three, update. The third manuscript draft of the Dragon's Prophecy, Israel, the Dark Resurrection, and the End of the Age is just about finished. About 120 days from this posting, it will be released, the Dragon's Prophecy. To be the first to get it, just go to Amazon or wherever you get books, and you can secure your copy. All right, what is going on? What's going on is not stopping. These are prophetic days. In just the past few weeks, we almost saw a major war begin, what could have been a world war. And for the first time, we saw Iran attack Israel directly with over 300 missiles and drones. And now, as we post this, something many never thought they would ever see. America has been exploding with hatred against Israel for the first time ever. It's exploding on college campuses all over the nation. In Columbia, here in New York, in the Ivy League, Harvard, Yale, in the University of Southern California, in the University of Texas, in George Washington University, in the Capitol, where they draped the statue of George Washington with a Palestinian flag, all over the nation. A wave of anti-Israel and anti-Semitic rage. In Columbia University, the protesters announced, Zionists have entered the camp. We don't want no Zionists here. Throughout the universities of America, they've chanted, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. What does that mean? From the river to the sea is where Israeli citizens live. That's Israel. It means they want every Jewish person in Israel to be eliminated from the land or dead. Others chanted, from the river to the sea, Palestine is Arab. It'd be like people shouting, from California to Boston, America is white. And the colleges have had little problem with it. See, protesters have chanted to bomb Tel Aviv. Others chanted, we are Hamas. Others chanted, Hamas, make us proud, kill another soldier now. And the colleges didn't do much. The University of Southern California, the protesters found Jewish students wearing Jewish symbols. They ripped them off of them. At the Ivy League Yale University, pro-Hamas students attacked Jewish students. In one campus, they shouted, long live Hamas, death to the Jews. And what did the universities do? Not much. And mostly, they did something only when they were exposed for not doing anything. Imagine if the protesters had shouted death to other groups. Now, listen to this one. In one campus, the protesters shouted, never forget the 7th of October. Sounds good, as like a reminder of the atrocities Hamas committed on the Israelis. But that wasn't what they were saying. They said, never forget the 7th of October. It will happen 10,000 more times. The 7th of October will be every day for you. Talking to Jewish students. College students across America celebrated and cheered for Hamas and for the slaughter of innocent Israeli citizens on October 7th. And what did the universities do? Not much. One demonstrator had a sign with a Palestinian flag and the words, final solution, referring to Hitler's final solution of annihilating the Jews in the Holocaust. This is not your grandparents' peace rally of the 1960s. This is something else, another animal altogether, much darker. The leader of the anti-Israel demonstrations at Columbia was questioned by the faculty about what he said about Zionists. Now first, who are Zionists? Zionism simply means, or a Zionist, that you are for the return of the Jewish people to Zion or Israel. They have the right to do that, and for Israel to exist. That makes every prophet of the Bible a Zionist. That makes the Apostle Paul a Zionist. That makes the 12 disciples Zionists. That makes the Virgin Mary a Zionist. That makes Jesus, Yeshua, the Messiah, a Zionist. That makes God a Zionist. Well, they questioned him about Zionism, Zionist. And you know what he said? He said, Zionists quote, do not deserve to live. And if he could kill them, he would. He didn't have any immediate plans to do so, but he believed they should all be dead. And what did the faculty who questioned him do? They asked him, and I quote, what resources do you feel are available to you here at Columbia? What resources do you feel are available? It's like Adolf Hitler shows up on campus and says, I want to kill all the Jews. And the faculty asked him, Adolf, what resources do you feel are available for you here at Columbia? Well, I'd like some resources of some gas chambers and some Zyklon tablets, some cyanide gas that we can gas all the Jews. Now, can you imagine if somebody at Columbia or almost any of the universities said, liberals don't deserve to live, or LGBT people, or women, or black or Latino, you fill in the blank. How many minutes do you think it would take them to expel that person? In fact, if someone said that they couldn't even call a transgender biological male a woman, just that, do you know what would have happened? They would have been punished. And if they refused to change, they would be banned from that college. But this one says that Zionists, fill in Jews for that, don't deserve to live. And do they ban him? No, they ask him if he feels that he has the resources available to him. And this is the one who was leading the demonstration at Columbia. You want to know what kind of spirit is behind this? You've got it right there. And what did Columbia do after he said this and even posted him saying it online? Virtually nothing. It was only after it became public and was exposed in the media, after the demonstrations, only then that Columbia suddenly decided that they couldn't have him on campus anymore, only because they were exposed. But you know what was exposed? This exposes the total bankruptcy of wokeism. Diversity, inclusion, tolerance, equity. Apparently not when you're a Jew, not when you're an Israeli. They'll talk about microaggressions. If you do anything, say anything that could offend somebody's sensibility in any way, if you use the wrong terminology, the wrong pronoun, if it offends wokeism, that's a big crime. But if you're a Jew or an Israeli, it's okay to call for your death or to allow calls for your death. We're good with that. In fact, we can celebrate murder. How bankrupt can you get when you can rejoice over the rape, torture, and mutilation of innocent Israeli fathers, mothers, and children? Do you know what all the woke and left-wing activists said in the wake of Hamas's slaughter of innocent Israeli families? Nothing. Do you know what all the woke left-wing radical feminist women's rights groups said about the brutal sexual abuse, rape, and murder of Israeli women? Nothing. Do you know what all the woke and left-wing children's rights organizations said about all the Israeli children who were tortured, murdered, beheaded, and burned? Nothing. And when they slaughtered all those families and all those young people at that concert, where were all the young people and faculty and professors of the young people at Harvard and Yale and Columbia and all the other institutions? Did they demonstrate about it? No. Did they show their support? No. Did they even mention it? No. Instead, they shouted their support for Hamas, the murderers who did it. And do you know what the United Nations said in view of the atrocities? Virtually nothing. These groups could hardly find a word of criticism for Hamas until they were forced to. But they jumped at condemning Israel. This is not normal, and it's not natural. Something else is going on. The Bible says, woe to you who call evil good and good evil. And the truth is, it's not just that the colleges have allowed this and only don't allow it when they're exposed on the web or by Senate committees. The truth is, they're behind it because they set it in motion, because this is the gospel of wokeness. This is what they're teaching the students, that Western civilization is evil, that Christianity is evil, that America is evil, that men are evil, that male and female as a reality is evil. And you're going to send your children to these organizations and pay them your fortunes to indoctrinate them into their own image and undo everything you've spent years teaching them to do, Christians, conservatives. If anything, this has exposed the utter bankruptcy of wokeism, the utter amorality of it. So much for safe spaces and so much for microaggressions for sensitivity, so much for inclusivity. Leave it to the issue of Israel and the Jew to expose the golden calf that's been erected for this generation. The idol has feet of clay. Wokeism rails against what they call white colonialism or privilege, which is a rebranded form of Marxist ideology. There's not a lot of white colonialism these days, so what do they target? Of all nations, they target Israel. They call Israel a colonial power. It's amazing. If any people have been the victims of colonial powers or empires longer than any other people, it's the Jewish people. It's Israel. From the Egyptian Empire, the Assyrian Empire, the Babylonian Empire, the Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, the Islamic empires, the Spanish Empire, the Russian Empire, and on and on and on. The actual truth is, Israel was part of the end of colonialism, as in the British Empire when it withdrew from the Middle East. So here in the halls of wokedom, they deify victimhood. They say that they're for the victim. And whom do they choose to attack? The Jew. The greatest victim, the greatest oppressed, persecuted, slaughtered people in the history of this planet. They picked the one nation of all nations that came into existence for the purpose of protecting its people from annihilation that rose up out of the ashes of the Holocaust. Those are the geniuses of wokeness. Now, we need to pray for all people, love all people, and also at the same time oppose evil. One innocent life lost is a tragedy from any people, and we're not to rejoice over it. The tragedy is when all the Israeli villagers and young people and families were killed. The Gaza Strip and the West Bank was filled with celebrations over their murders. The tragedy is that the majority of people in Gaza approved of what Hamas did to the Israeli families. And after all this, they were still in favor of Hamas ruling. Hamas has destroyed Gaza as well as everything else. They've robbed it of its food supplies, of its humanitarian aid. It's a sickness, it's a darkness that is destroying the Palestinians. Hamas has been a key part of that. The Israelis don't want war, they hate it. They want peace, but they're the only nation in the world that's not allowed to protect itself against a terrorist organization that is bent on its destruction. Imagine if this happened to America. Well, it did. It was called 9/11. It led us to engage not in one war, but two wars. And in just one of them, the numbers of civilian deaths is estimated to be over 100,000 people. We fought in the Second World War. It's considered the most moral of wars against Hitler. In that war, how many civilians died? The number is estimated at 38 million. But compared to its population, what happened to Israel would be as if in America, terrorists living on our borders invaded America, went into thousands of American homes, tortured, raped, mutilated, burned, and slaughtered 44,000 Americans, fathers, mothers, children, and babies. What do you think we would do? Would we leave any chance for this to happen again? And Hamas uses the people of Gaza as their human shields. They use hospital schools to put children and the sick in front of them. And wars are messy, but this is the most challenging for Israel because it's happening with human shields. And yet, unlike almost every other nation or army in the world, Israel told the people of Gaza to move south out of harm's way before they began the operation against the terrorists of Hamas. Hamas, on the other hand, specifically targeted civilians. That was their purpose, to brutally murder the nearby Israeli villagers. It's as if there's a serial killer going around killing men, women, and children, and the police come after him to stop him, and in the shootout, there are other casualties. And the geniuses at our universities rail against the police and hail the serial murderer as their hero. They say, "I am the serial killer," as in, I am Hamas. Israel sought to get the civilians out of harm's way. Hamas specifically invaded the homes of civilians and tortured and mutilated them. And in the halls of academia, students and professors are glorifying Hamas, the serial murderers, and warring against the people of those victims. They rail against those who do not pronounce the pronoun they demand, as in aggressive act, they'll call it, but the murder of children they will champion. And these same people, like the leader of the Columbia demonstrations who said Zionists, people who believe that Jewish people have the right to return to their homeland, do not deserve to live. In the same video, he put up his pronouns. He said it's he, she, or they. At the same time, at one of the drag queen storybook hours, the drag queen led all the little children in chanting Free Palestine. So this is an experiment to those people. Go to Gaza, go to Hamas, do your thing, and see if they will honor your pronouns. I don't think they will, but you know what they will do? They'll take you to a rooftop and push you off to your death. And that's what you're advocating for. You're advocating for those who would murder you. You know, there's a word that sums up many of these at these universities. It's the word sophomore. It speaks of a second-year college student. It comes from the Greek sophos, means wise, and moros means fool. So it means a wise fool, somebody who thinks that they're wise but they're a fool. Well, there's actually a Bible verse that has both of those Greek words within it. It's Romans 1:22. It says this, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. And the context is, this is what happens to those who turn away from the knowledge of God. They become fools. Does this have anything to do with the end times? It totally does. First, the Bible says that in the end times, Israel, there'll be an Israel back in the world. So after 2,000 years of being gone, just as the Bible said, against all odds, Israel is back. Second, it says that the world in the end times will be focused on Israel against all odds. And so it has again. Third, the world will see Israel as the center of controversy. Well, it does. Fourth, Israel will be attacked. It is being attacked again and again and again. Physically attacked by Hamas, by Iran, just in the last few months in the Middle East. And you who attack it on your campus, guess what? You're part of biblical prophecy. Now listen to this from the book of Revelation. I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs coming out of the mouths of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast and the false prophet. They are spirits of demons performing signs which go out to the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. Who is the dragon? The enemy. Who is the beast? The Antichrist. The spirits that come out of them go out to the leaders of the earth, the world, and they cause the world to come to Armageddon, to come against the tiny nation of Israel. The spirits are demonic. They don't make sense. They're not just. They're not fair. They're not rational. They hate and they want destruction. More than anything, they want to destroy the Jewish people. They want to destroy the nation of Israel. Why? Very simple. God said that the Jewish people, the children of Israel, are put on earth as witnesses that he is, that he exists, that his promises are true. And it is through them that came the word of God, the light of God, the Messiah, the gospel. And it will be through them again that the Messiah will come again. And that is why the colleges of America are raging against Israel and the Jews. That's why cities all over the world are raging against Israel and the Jews. It's not natural. It's not rational. It's spiritual. And only the Bible explains it. The Bible says that at the end of the age, all nations will come against Israel. Unfortunately, that word all includes America. Why is this happening? What's happening significant and prophetic? Because it's happening primarily in America, Israel's closest ally. If that happens here, what will be left for Israel? It's happening among the young. The young represent the future. Young Americans represent the future of America. Do you know that when they did polls of young Americans, they found out that virtually a majority of them, young Americans, were in favor of Hamas? Do you know that virtually a majority of young Americans believe that what Hamas did to the Israeli families and youth on October 7th was justified? This is your brave new world. This is the future we are nurturing. And college campuses, that's even more the future. These are the ones who will be running American society and government. There are historians who are saying that this is reminiscent of what happened in Germany. Do you know where much of Hitler's support came from? The young. The college campuses. They were filled with anti-Semitism. And now for the first time since Hitler, it's happening in the West on American campuses. And so when you read the prophecies of the Bible that speak of all nations coming against Israel, hating Israel, you've been warned. Armageddon is already there in the one who says Zionists or Israel or Jews have no right to live. That's how you get Armageddon. It's the foreshadow of the frogs of Revelation, and it's filling our world. And we would expect, as foretold in end-time prophecy, in the last days the world will hate Israel and will hate believers in Israel's Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus. We're here. Now I'm going to tell you a secret, more than one, that CNN will never tell you. In all these demonstrations, they venerate Hamas. That chant, "We are Hamas, I am Hamas." I'm going to tell you a secret behind it all that they will never say. You see, there's something more going on behind it all. Behind the issue of the Palestinian agenda, behind Gaza, behind Hamas. Mohammed Amin al-Husseini was born at the end of the 19th century in Ottoman-controlled Jerusalem. In the First World War, he fought in the Ottoman army. After the war, he returned to Jerusalem and focused on derailing all movements towards the birth of a Jewish nation in the land. His inflammatory speeches incited violent Arab riots, leaving several Jewish people dead. In 1921, he assumed the title of Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. In the years that followed, he would play a central part in instigating violent Arab uprisings against the Jews of the Middle East, of the land of Israel, resulting in their blood. Because of this, a warrant was issued for his arrest, but he escaped prosecution. He fled to Lebanon, then Iraq, and then he went to Nazi Germany. The Mufti was a fan of Adolf Hitler. Soon after Hitler rose to power in Germany, the Mufti expressed his support for the new government. He said that the Palestinian Muslims were enthusiastic supporters of the Nazi regime. He looked forward to the spread of fascism throughout the Middle East. And he was especially a fan of the Nazis' anti-Jewish campaigns. He appealed to Hitler to rid Palestine of Jewish settlements. In 1940, the Mufti drafted a document he hoped the Nazi government would approve, in which the Arab countries would be given the right to, quote, solve the Jewish issue in their lands as the Nazis had solved it in Germany. In November of 1941, the Mufti obtained a meeting with Adolf Hitler in the Reich Chancellery in Berlin. He told Hitler that the Arabs were his natural allies, as they had the same enemies, most specifically the Jews. He asked Hitler to commit to the elimination of a national Jewish homeland, what would become Israel. Hitler affirmed his commitment. He said yes to destroying the Jewish element residing in the Arab sphere at the right time. The Holocaust was to be taken to the land of Israel. In July 1942, the Mufti visited a Nazi concentration camp, and he was impressed by what he saw. Throughout the Holocaust, the Mufti actually worked to block the routes of Jewish people trying to escape the Holocaust. He was personally responsible for preventing the escape of 500 Jewish children, consigning them to their deaths in a Nazi concentration camp. He would be accused of condemning 400,000 Jewish people to extermination. During the war, the Mufti actually worked for the Third Reich, broadcasting Nazi propaganda throughout the Arab world. The Nazis, in turn, took up the task of distributing his writings, including a pamphlet he wrote for the SS, where he called for the total destruction of the Jewish people. He implored his Nazi employers to bomb Tel Aviv and Jerusalem in order to kill the Jews there. He worked with Heinrich Himmler, the overseer of the Holocaust, to organize Muslim SS killing squads. He publicly exhorted the Muslim world to follow the example of the Nazis in a definitive solution to the, quote, Jewish problem. Near the end of the war, the Mufti broadcast from Radio Berlin. He said, "Arabs, kill the Jews wherever you find them." After the war, the Mufti was identified as a war criminal. He again escaped. He fled to Egypt, where he was welcomed as a hero. During his time with the Nazis, his popularity among the Arabs only increased. He resumed his leadership in the Arab world, and he worked with the Muslim Brotherhood. When Israel was about to be reborn in 1948, and when it was, the Mufti fought to destroy it. Through the Mufti, the demonic anti-Semitism of Nazism merged with Arab nationalism and radical Islamic ideology. The demonic Nazi hatred of the Jews spread throughout the radical Arabic and Islamic world, a hatred that sought their extermination. The Mufti was not just a major leader in the Arab world, he was the leader of the Palestinian world. He has been called the father of Palestinian nationalism. He was central in birthing the Palestinian movement against Israel. So there's a direct line from the meetings of the early Nazi party in Munich to what happened to Israel on October 7th when Hamas invaded it. And even though Hitler didn't survive the war, the Mufti continued his work in the Middle East. One prominent Muslim leader at the time said, Germany and Hitler are gone, but al-Husseini, the Mufti, will continue the struggle. Now think about that. Nazism is opposed to radical Islam, and Islam to Nazism. One is secular, the other is religious. And yet they were joined together. Why? Because behind them was something spiritual. They shared the same overriding goal, which was the destruction of the Jewish people. So listen, this is what the media will never tell you. The father of Palestinian nationalism, the Palestinian movement, was an agent of Nazism. He was an actual paid employee working for Adolf Hitler, his boss. See, there's something deeper behind the movement of Palestinian nationalism, something of the spiritual realm. Let's go further. 1946, the year after the Holocaust's end, when the Mufti flees to Egypt, he meets an Arab teenager attending a secondary school in Cairo. He takes that teenager under his wing and recruits him to his cause. The youth becomes his disciple. His name? Yasser Arafat. Yasser Arafat, the most famous leader of the Palestinian agenda. The Mufti indoctrinated him and his associates into his hatred of the Jewish people and his ideology of exterminating them. Arafat was discipled and indoctrinated by a man who worked for Adolf Hitler and worked with Adolf Hitler. And the torch of the Mufti would pass to Arafat. Arafat would become the leader of Palestinian nationalism. It is no accident that he was also the leader of Palestinian terrorism. It was all the same goal. In order to train Arafat to wage war against the Jews of Israel, the Mufti secretly brought in a former Nazi commando to Egypt. The Nazi commando taught Arafat and his comrades how to launch attacks against Jewish people in Israel, how to wage guerrilla warfare, how to shed Jewish blood. The Nazis were good at that. Arafat himself would then recruit Nazi instructors into the Palestinian agenda, including those who worked in the Nazi death machine. This is the cause that is being hailed and celebrated throughout the campuses of America. Now we move to one other person. The media will never tell you about this one. His name was Hassan al-Banna. Banna was born in 1906 in a rural Nile Delta town near Cairo. When he reached adulthood, he became an elementary school teacher. Disturbed over the abandonment of Islamic beliefs in Egyptian culture, he preached a return to the Quran. In March 1928, he founded an organization dedicated to Islam and jihad, the struggle or fight against the enemies of the faith. The organization would be called the Muslim Brotherhood. 10 years later, the Brotherhood had branches in every province of Egypt. 10 years after that, it had 500,000 active members and many more sympathizers. The Brotherhood was born just as Nazism was coming to power in Germany, or rising to power. Like the Mufti, al-Banna was an enthusiastic fan of Adolf Hitler. He especially admired the Führer's hatred of the Jewish people. He wrote to Hitler repeatedly to express his admiration and his hope that Islam and Nazism would become collaborators. Every year from 1935 onward, the Brotherhood would send delegations to attend the Nazi Party's annual rallies in Nuremberg. The Brotherhood would translate Hitler's autobiography and rantings against the Jewish people into Arabic. It was called Mein Kampf. They translated it as Jihadi, or My Jihad. So the darkness goes from Mein Kampf to My Jihad, and it became one of the best-selling books in the Arab world, the autobiography of Hitler. The Brotherhood took the fighting against the Jewish people into the Middle East. 1938, it led demonstrations against the Jews of Egypt. The next year, it bombed a synagogue in Cairo, ransacked Jewish homes in the city. They were doing what the Nazis were doing in Germany. They ransacked Jewish homes, burned synagogues to the ground at Kristallnacht. The collaboration between the Nazis and the Muslim Brotherhood went even deeper. Beginning in the 1930s, Hitler actually financed the Muslim Brotherhood. Brotherhood members, in turn, functioned as Middle Eastern agents, Nazi agents, and spies for Germany. Its members fought for Hitler as members of Nazi troops, including the two specially formed SS divisions. The Nazis also helped the Muslim Brotherhood in its organizing, its propaganda, and its waging of war. Now, al-Banna was not only an admirer of Hitler, he was an admirer of the Mufti. The two became partners in their war against the Jews. Through the Muslim Brotherhood and the Mufti, Nazi anti-Semitism spread through the Arab world, became a central pillar of radical Islamic thought and ideology. Accordingly, Jews were now to be viewed as evil by nature. They were now depicted as the incarnation of evil, its chief wellspring in the modern world. The Jews had come to Israel, according to this belief, to implement their plot of world domination. Their very existence constituted an existential threat. The Muslim Brotherhood could not negotiate with them. They couldn't live with them or make peace with them. The only thing they could do was destroy them, exterminate them. So behind the radical Islamic ideology, the radical Islamic preaching, was the voice of Adolf Hitler. The Mufti became the Brotherhood's representative in the land of Israel. He was central in bringing the Brotherhood into Israel. This is going to turn out to be real critical for our time. When Israel was reborn, the troops of the Muslim Brotherhood entered the land to destroy the Jewish nation. So did the Mufti and his young disciple Yasser Arafat. The Mufti's prime headquarters in Israel was the city of Gaza. And through him, the Muslim Brotherhood had an effect there. The Brotherhood would give birth to a child. The child would be born in Gaza. It would be called the Islamic Resistance Movement, or in Arabic, Harakat al-Mukawama al-Aslamiyah. The name was shortened into an acronym. The Brotherhood's child was given the name Hamas. This is the origin of Hamas. This is where it springs from. You can find the Muslim Brotherhood also behind Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, September 11th, and countless other evils. Hamas was born in Gaza on December 10th, 1987. Why did it come into existence? It's all there in its founding charter. Listen to what it says. This is the actual charter that began Hamas. It says, quoting from al-Banna, Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it. In other words, Hamas exists to annihilate Israel. And this is what they're hailing as heroes on American campuses. And they'll say it's not anti-Semitism. No, it actually is. The charter of Hamas goes on. For our struggle against the Jews is extremely wide-ranging and grave. Our struggle against the Jews. In German, the words, our struggle or my struggle is Mein Kampf. They're using Hitler's words. Article 22 of Hamas's charter could have been written by Hitler himself. It says the Jews took control of the world media, news agencies, the press, publishing houses, broadcasting stations, others with their money. They stirred revolutions in various parts of the world. They were behind the French Revolution, the Communist Revolution, most revolutions with their money. They formed secret societies such as Freemasons, Rotary Clubs, the Lions, for the purpose of sabotaging societies and achieving Zionist interests. There's no war going on anywhere without having their finger in it. This is classic anti-Semitism, and Hitler is all over it. The charter goes on in Hitler's words. The Jews aim at undermining societies, destroying values, corrupting consciences, deteriorating character, Israel, Judaism, and Jews. Israel is evil, according to this. Jews are evil, and so is Judaism. Hamas's charter makes it clear they will never make any peace with the Jewish people, even in the next life. They say to the Jewish people of Israel, you shall be overcome and thrown together into hell. This is the only way to liberate Palestine. And this is what they're hailing on American campuses, chanting, we are Hamas. Well, let's see what Hamas is chanting. It's actually there in their charter. It's in their vow. Listen, it says this: I will assault and kill. Assault and kill. Assault and kill. I didn't repeat that. That's exactly what the charter says 3 times. I will assault and kill. It sounds like the mantra of somebody who is satanically possessed, and with good reason. Without Hitler, that charter could never be written. They are both part of the same evil. The hatred of the Jewish people is central to their worldview. You can't negotiate with it because it's the foundation of their existence, to annihilate Israel and the Jewish people. You can't negotiate with it any more than you can negotiate with a demonic spirit, which is basically what you're dealing with. And they chant in the universities, "Long live Hamas forever." Now another mystery. Hamas is an Arabic acronym about Islamic resistance. But the amazing thing is, it's also a Hebrew word. And it's a Hebrew word that actually appears in the Bible. With that in mind, listen to what the Bible actually says about Hamas. The word from the Psalms. "Deliver me, O Lord, from evil men. Preserve me from men of Hamas." And from Ezekiel, "Hamas has risen up into a rod of wickedness." And this also, "For the land is filled with crimes of blood, and the city is full of Hamas." And here's a command from the Bible: put away Hamas. Or it can be translated, put an end to Hamas. Do you know what Hamas means in Hebrew, in the Bible? It means evil, violence, and destruction. So when they chant on American campuses, "Long live Hamas," in Hebrew, in the language of the Bible, they are chanting, "Long live violence. Long live destruction." And when they chant, "We are Hamas," in the language of the Bible, they are chanting, "We are evil. Long live evil. We are evil." They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're saying. They are pawns. They have become pawns of evil. The Palestinians have largely also become pawns of dark agents, vessels of terror, pawns of Hamas, pawns of violence, pawns of destruction, pawns of evil. But Hamas didn't begin it. Hamas came from the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood and the Mufti were following the lead of Adolf Hitler. So the evil is deeper and older. And Hitler and the Nazis were also pawns of something even deeper and older. Everything we are seeing now is just the latest manifesting of an ancient war and ancient evil, the longest of wars against any people. It defies human explanation because it's not human. 2,000 years ago, it was written in the book of Revelation. Listen. "Now when the dragon saw that he'd been cast to the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child." Who's the woman? She wears a crown of 12 stars, the 12 tribes of Israel. She gives birth to the male child who will rule, Messiah. It can only be Israel, the Jewish nation. And the dragon? Well, the dragon is the enemy. Ha-Satan in Hebrew, Satan. The dragon persecutes the woman. The enemy persecutes Israel, the Jewish people. And verse 17, it says, "And the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring." Its ultimate fulfillment is yet to come, but it reveals the war that is already in progress. We are witnessing the latest manifestation of that war. It's a war that spans ages. It was waged by the pharaohs of Egypt, the rulers of Babylon, the emperors of Rome, the kings of the Middle Ages, the czars of Russia, the leaders of Nazi Germany, the leaders of Hamas, and even by those in our own land. They are also pawns, and behind it all is the dragon. In the last days, the dragon will wage war against the children of Israel. So he's warring now. The same one who wars against Israel will also war against the spiritual children of Israel. That's you, the believer, the follower of Messiah, a Christian. If he wars against the one, he's going to war against the other. So every follower of Messiah, Yeshua, the Messiah of Israel, must pray and uphold the children of Israel. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And we have to pray for everyone. We have to pray for those who are deceived, for those who are pawns of the game, for the children of Ishmael, for those under the spell of Hamas, of violence, evil, and destruction. The only answer to Israel's anguish is the Messiah of Israel. When Messiah comes, Yeshua, when he comes, all the anti-Semites of the world and all who shout for Israel's destruction will bow their knees before the King of Israel. In that day, there will be no more Hezbollah, no more Hamas, no more violence, no more evil, no more destruction, as it is written in Isaiah. And Hamas shall no longer be heard in your land. No more evil, no more tears, no more sorrow. And the rage of the dragon, the evil of the dragon shall be no more, because the Lion of the tribe of Judah will have vanquished him. Be of good courage, because what we have seen, the Bible foretold. And that tells you that your God is still on the throne, and he's not getting off of it. That means you're on the winning side. And the only answer for Israel, for America, for the world remains Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah, the light of the world, the only hope, the only one. If you do not now know him, if you are not now following him, and if you are not yet born again, saved, a child of God, you know you're going to heaven, ask him to come into your heart, into your life, that you might be born again, and begin to follow him with all your heart, and he'll lead you, and he'll save you, just as he will save his ancient people Israel on that day. Now, you may have guessed, but everything that's happening is just part of a gigantic mystery, which is going to be revealed in the dragon's prophecy. Now, it lies behind what was, what is now, and what is yet to come, and it's going to affect your life. You can actually be the first to receive it. Secure your copy. Just go to Amazon or wherever you get books online. Type in the dragon's prophecy. And if you haven't already, to not miss these prophetic messages and postings, hit subscribe and like. And to get free gifts, mysteries, and much more, go to hopeoftheworld.org. And you can actually be part of God's end time purposes. Until next time, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might, and he will be strong for you. This is Jonathan Cahn. Shalom. Hi, I'm Jonathan Cahn, and I hope you were blessed with the video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. Feel free to share your reactions with your comments and how you were blessed, and share this video with your friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Could an ancient template, almost 3,000 years old, give us a stunningly exact revelation as to where we are right now and where we're going? Could it reveal to us the mystery of those involved in this coming election? This is Jonathan Cahn. What I'm about to open up in this message is going to reveal the mystery behind the leaders of our time, past, present, and possibly future. The mystery of Donald Trump. And while we're at it, the mystery of Barack Obama, of Hillary Clinton, of Bill Clinton, those who just spoke at the Democratic Convention to exalt and send forth Kamala Harris, and more. We're going to have an amazingly precise revelation to open up. First, send this video to anyone and everyone in your life that needs to see it, and hit like. Second, to make sure you get and don't miss the prophetic messages that I'm going to be putting on this channel, hit subscribe now. And the update, the day is almost here. The dragon's prophecy is going to be coming out in about 1 week or less from this posting, coming out September 3rd. It's going to be explosive. It's going to open up mysteries that may reveal exactly what's going to take place, exact events, and the exact timing when they will take place. How do you get it? You can order it, a copy for yourself or for those in your life. Right now, just go online wherever you get books and you'll get it. Pray that God powerfully uses it. Last thing, to get free gifts, see all my messages and teachings, to be part of God's end time purposes, just remember Hope of the World and go to hopeoftheworld.org. Stay tuned to the end for more, a secret I never revealed. Donald Trump. He's been the dominant single figure of the American political realm for the last several years. People hate him, people love him, but you can't ignore him. We are right now standing on the eve of a critical election that's going to determine America's future. Do we have a biblical clue? God speaks through his word. Is there a template in the Bible that gives us revelation into this moment? Ancient Israel had known of God, but then it fell away into apostasy. It turned away from the ways of God, the laws of God, drove him out of its public squares, turned to other gods and idols, took up sexual immorality, offered up its children as sacrifices, and increasingly persecuted those who stayed faithful to the ways of God. It is now America. That is the nation that has known God but turned away from him, overturned his ways, driven him out of its public squares, turned to other gods and idols without mentioning what they are, embraced sexual immorality, offered up its children as sacrifices in abortion. And now it's on the eve of persecuting those who uphold the ways of God. The amazing thing is the leaders and events of Israel's fall from God match up with the leaders and events of our nation, and the parallels are striking, even stunning. They give us revelation. The leaders are each following an ancient prototype. I first wrote about this in the book called The Paradigm. But after I wrote it, the mystery continued to unfold and come true. In the biblical template of 1 Kings, a king rises to power in the northern kingdom. He inaugurates a culture war. The king's name was Achav, or Ahab. He was a divided man, a compromised man. He knew of God, but he warred against the ways of God. He championed the worship of Baal, which meant child sacrifice and sexual immorality, and the overturning of biblical absolutes and traditional values. So too, in America, a culture war began. The term was coined at the same moment that a man rose to power. His name was Bill Clinton. He was at the center of the culture war. Behind Clinton is the paradigm of Ahab. Ahab was a divided man, known of God, but had fallen away, warring against his ways. So Clinton was a divided man. He had known of God, but he had fallen away. He was warring against the ways of God. Ahab championed the worship of Baal, and with it, child sacrifice and immorality. Bill Clinton would be the first president to champion the killing of children in abortion. How long was Bill Clinton on the national stage? When did his rise to power begin? His time on the national stage began when he became governor of Arkansas at the start of 1979. And it ended with the end of his presidency at the start of 2001. That comes out to 22 years. In 1 Kings, it is written, Ahab, the son of Omri, reigned over Israel in Samaria 22 years. 1 Kings 16:29. The years of Bill Clinton followed the years of King Ahab and were determined by his ancient prototype. But Ahab wasn't alone. He reigned in a co-regency with his wife, a woman who sought power for herself. His wife was named Isabel. We know her as Jezebel. She grew up with cosmopolitan values, the daughter of the priest of the goddess Astarte. She worshipped female power. So Hillary Clinton took on liberal cosmopolitan values, worshipped female power. The ancient queen Jezebel saw traditional values as obstacles to be stamped out, and biblical faith as something to wage war against. So she would war against traditional values and would incite her husband to do the same. Behind Hillary Clinton is the paradigm of Isabel, or Jezebel. So she too would see traditional values as obstacles to be stamped out, biblical faith as something to war against. She was quoted as saying, deep-seated religious beliefs must be changed. She too would war against traditional values. She would incite her husband to do likewise. And as Jezebel was the chief advocate of Baal worship in Israel, which involved child sacrifice, so Hillary Clinton was the chief advocate of abortion in America. In fact, Planned Parenthood named her the abortion champion of the century. The days of the king and queen were not only of apostasy, but of scandal. It's written that Ahab coveted the vineyard of a man named Naboth. But Naboth would not give up his vineyard, so Jezebel came up with a plan. She had Naboth falsely accused and killed. So Ahab and Jezebel were involved in a scandal involving real estate, and involved the death of a man who was the keeper of the real estate that they obtained, Naboth. A vineyard is a garden of fruits. Naboth's name means fruit. It matches the land that they were questing for. So too, the Clinton years were filled with scandal. One of the most famous involved real estate. It was called Whitewater. And it involved the death of a man who oversaw the real estate. His name was Vince Foster. As Naboth means fruits, matching the land he oversaw, the vineyard, Whitewater, the name of the land involved in the scandal, was forest land. And what does Vince Foster, what does Foster mean? It means keeper of the forest. The name of the man who died matches the land he oversaw. But the greatest scandal of the Clinton years was the Lewinsky scandal. It would lead to Clinton's impeachment. The fall of King Ahab was linked to the tribe of Levi. He would break the Levitical law, and he would die in the city of the Levites. The fall of Ahab was linked to the tribe of Levi. From the tribe of Levi comes the name Levin. From Levin comes Lewin. From Lewin comes Lewinsky. Lewinsky means from the tribe of Levi. So the fall of the American Ahab would also be linked to the tribe of Levi. When was Ahab's scandal exposed? In the 19th year of his time on the national stage. Clinton entered the national stage in 1979. The 19th year of his time on the national stage comes out to 1998. When was the scandal exposed? In 1998, the 19th year. Clinton entered the national stage in January of 1979. That brings the 19th year to January of 1998. When did the scandal break out? It broke out in January of 1998. Bill Clinton was sworn in as governor on January 20th, 1979. When did the scandal break? On January 20th, 1998, the 19th year to the exact day. After Ahab's scandal was exposed by the prophet Elijah, he had 3 years left. 3 years after the breaking of the scandal, his reign came to an end. Clinton's scandal broke on January 20th, 1998. 3 years after the day the scandal of Bill Clinton was exposed brings us to January 20th, 2001. The Clinton years came to an end on January 20th, 2001. And there's even more. In the story of Ahab, the king makes a display of repentance, confessing his sin before returning to his old ways. 3 years after his show of repentance, a calamity befalls the nation. Clinton made a show of his repentance in a White House prayer breakfast, where he finally confessed and admitted he had sinned. 3 years later from that day takes us to September 11th, 2001, the day of calamity for the nation. It takes us to the morning of that day. The White House event began around 8:30, lasted to about 10:30. 9/11 begins in that same window of time and ends seconds before 10:30. In the biblical template, King Ahab's reign comes to an end, but people don't realize that the Queen Jezebel, continued on. She remained on the political stage. She dwelt in the halls of power in the capital city. So Clinton's presidency came to an end, but the First Lady, Hillary Clinton, would continue on the political stage. And as Jezebel dwelt in the halls of power in the capital city, so Hillary Clinton dwelt in the halls of power also in the capital city, Washington. As Senator, then Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton would attempt to become the ruler of the land. But in the template, the reign goes to a younger man. So now a younger man enters the mystery. In the ancient template, the younger man is named Joram, King Joram. In the modern replaying, his name is Barack Obama. He'll follow the paradigm of Joram. In his ways, in his policies, in the policies, see, Joram followed in the ways and policies of Ahab and Jezebel. So Obama would follow in the agenda begun by the Clintons. The reign of Joram would be known for hostility to God and to his people. The rule of Barack Obama would also be known for its hostility to God, to biblical values, and to religious conservatives. He would preside over a period of time when the nation began noticeably turning away from biblical values. He sought to force believers to pay for abortion. He became the first president to advocate the overturning of the historic and biblical definition of marriage, to light up the White House in a rainbow. He would begin the wokeification of the Army and the Justice Department, and he would be hostile in general to biblical values and to Israel. In his last days, he would let a UN resolution go forth that condemned Israel and declared that Israel's dwelling in biblical Jerusalem was illegal. During Joram's reign, the former Queen Jezebel dwelt in the king's palace. So in the days of Obama, the former First Lady, Hillary Clinton, dwelt in the White House. Obama entered the national stage suddenly with his rise to the presidency, with his appearance at the Democratic Convention of 2004. He began leaving the public stage in the Democratic Convention of 2016. That's 12 years. He was sworn into national office as senator in January 2005, and then out of national office with the presidential inauguration of January 2017. Again, 12 years, a 12-year period. Now it is written, Joram, the son of Ahab, reigned for 12 years. 2 Kings 3:1. He was on the national stage for 12 years. Ancient Israel, the nation, then comes to a crossroads. If the house of Ahab continues in its rule, it's going to seal the nation's apostasy. All religious liberty is going to be stamped out. The word of God is going to be eliminated. The people of God are going to be persecuted. So too America was at a crossroads, culturally and politically. But in the ancient paradigm, there comes a surprise. A man whose name is Yehu, or we know him as Jehu. He will contain the mystery of Donald Trump. Behind the phenomenon of Donald Trump is a mystery that goes back to Jehu. He appears in the paradigm, in the book I wrote, The Paradigm, in the scripture verse, 1 Kings 19:16. God speaks to Elijah. It says, and Jehu, the son of Nimshi, you will anoint to be king over Israel. Then in 2 Kings 9:1, Elisha, the prophet, called one of the children of the prophets and said to him, gird your loins, take this box of oil in your hand and go to Ramoth Gilead. And when you come there, look out for Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, and go in and have him rise up from his brethren, and carry him to an inner chamber. Then take the box of oil, pour it on his head, and say, thus says the Lord, I've anointed you king over Israel. Then open the door and run. And it goes on to say, and when he came, behold, the captains of the host were sitting, and he said, I have an errand for you, O captain. And Jehu said, for which one of us? He said, to you, O captain. Now, Jehu is anointed to lead and is prophesied over. I don't know of many other presidential figures who, before they became president, were so anointed by man and prayed over them and prophesied over them. Reagan was given a word in the mid-1970s that he'd be president of the United States, a prophetic word. But Trump was prayed over, prophesied over more than any other. Who was Jehu? The text calls the men or the council in which Jehu is sitting the Sar Hayil. Sar means prince or leader. Hayil means first forces, as in an army, forces of men, band of soldiers. But it can also mean the force of wealth. Trump was a leader, a Sar of resources, wealth, riches. But it also speaks of Jehu as a soldier. He was a captain, a commander, a general. Jehu was not a member of the royal house. He wasn't a politician. He was a fighter. Jehu was a fighter. Donald Trump wasn't a politician. He's a fighter. He fights with everyone. Jehu was not a gentle man. He was a wild man. At times he seemed unpredictable, uncontrollable. Trump, the same way. With Jehu, you never knew what he was going to do or say next. Trump, same thing. Jehu would come on the national stage suddenly. He would shake up the status quo. Donald Trump would come suddenly, shake up the status quo. Jehu began a race to the throne of Israel. Trump began a race to the White House. Now, we don't know that Jehu was a man of God or even that he knew God, but we know he was a vessel of God, an instrument of God. With Donald Trump, we don't know where his heart is with God, but He was used as a vessel of God. The biblical template reveals that Jehu had not followed God up to that point. He was on the wrong side of the culture war. He was on the side of Ahab and Jezebel. He was a commander under them, and so on the side of Baal. So he would have been in favor of child sacrifice. So Trump had not lived a godly life, and he had been on the wrong side of the culture war. On the side of the Clintons, he had been in favor of abortion. But Jehu changed, and now he fought against the side of Baal. Donald Trump changed. He warred now against that which is against the ways of God, the forces of apostasy, abortion, the killing of children. It's written in 2 Kings 9:7, "You will strike the house of Ahab, your master, that I might avenge the blood of my servants the prophets at the hand of Jezebel." Jehu was anointed to put an end to the corrupt house of Ahab and Jezebel. Trump was there to put an end to the house of Clinton. That's what he would do. When he defeated Hillary Clinton, it was basically the end of the Clinton dynasty. Jehu mounts up his chariot and heads to the royal city. On the way, the watchmen see him coming, and they say the driving of the chariot's like that of Jehu. He drives furiously, or in Hebrew, crazily. Donald Trump would drive furiously. The Hebrew to describe Jehu's driving is shigaon, which you get mashugana, which literally means crazy, or he drives like a madman. Trump appeared to lead his campaign like a madman, and yet he won. The year of the warrior Jehu's rising was the 12th year of King Joram being on the national stage. The 12th year of Obama, the modern Joram, on the national stage was 2016. So the ancient template, the paradigm, points to the rise of the warrior Trump in the year 2016. Jehu would begin his rising at the end of Joram's 12-year reign. Trump would begin his rising at the end of the Obama presidency and the end of his 12 years on the national stage. But Jehu can't fully come to power without coming face to face against Israel's former first lady. So Trump can't come to the White House without coming face to face against America's former first lady. And it says in 2 Kings 9:30, when Jehu was come to Jezreel, Jezebel heard of it. She painted her face, she made up her head and looked out the window. And as Jehu entered in at the gate, she said, "Has Zimri come in peace, who slew his master?" The former first lady Jezebel is being sarcastic, calling Jehu by the name of another man, Zimri. She looks down on him. She finds him deplorable. Her personality is not like Ahab or Joram. It's one of anger and pride and vindictiveness. Well, people said that of Hillary Clinton. Trump and the former First Lady had several showdowns as Jezebel and Jehu. As Jezebel was for Baal worship, which is child sacrifice, Jehu was now against it. In the final debate between the two, it was a stark contrast. Clinton was for abortion, even late-term abortion, and Trump was strongly against it. It looked as if Clinton was going to crush Trump, but the template says that when the one who walks in the shoes of Jehu comes against the one who walks in the sandals of Jezebel, the one who walks according to Jehu's shoes will prevail. 2 Kings 9:33 says, "And he said, 'Throw her down.' So they threw her down." And so against all odds, Trump prevailed. And for Hillary Clinton, it was her political downfall. Now, amazing thing, it was actually prophesied before it happened. On the day when Hillary Clinton was to receive the nomination as the Democratic candidate for the presidency, a speech was given at that convention by a supporter of Clinton. And the theme of his speech were the words, "They threw her down." He said they threw her down, but she wouldn't stay down. They threw her down as a senator. She wouldn't stay down. They threw her down as Secretary of State. She wouldn't stay. They threw her down, threw her down, threw her down. They threw her down as the First Lady. They threw her down. It goes on and on. The whole speech is really that.
They threw her down as the First Lady, but she didn't stay thrown. They threw her down as a U.S. Senator, but she wouldn't stay thrown. They threw her down as a Secretary of State, but she wouldn't stay thrown. They threw her down in this very campaign, but she won't stay thrown.
Now, if you take the words of the speech that was given when Hillary Clinton was lifted up to stand against Trump, the American Jezebel, the American Jehu. You just take the words, threw her down, and you type that into the internet, it would take you to 2 Kings 9:33, the showdown of Jehu and Jezebel. They threw her down. She was anointed to stand against the American Jehu with the words, they threw her down. The words that prophesy, that speak of the downfall of Jezebel. Hillary Clinton was on the national stage and public life for 22 years with her husband, and on her own 12 years as senator and secretary of state. She left, she retired for 2 years, came back for 2 more years to run as president. So a total of 14 years on her own, 22 years with her husband. 14 years and 22 years. Jezebel was on the national stage of Israel with her husband for 22 years. On her own, 14 years. Jehu will now set his sights on the capital city, which is filled with corruption. Most concerning is a deep state occupied by the house of Ahab. So he goes there with one agenda, to drain the swamp. On the way to the throne, Jehu makes an alliance with the religious conservatives of the land. So Trump, on the way to the White House in his campaign, makes an alliance with the religious conservatives of America. Jehu specifically asks a man to become his partner in the chariot named Jehonadab in his race to the throne. Jehonadab is a religious conservative known for his piety and abstinence. So Trump invites as his running mate a religious conservative known for his piety and abstinence. Jehu wars against the worship of Baal, against child sacrifice, against what he calls witchcraft. Interesting, because those who practice witchcraft would have seen him as a threat. So it was not only the champions of child sacrifice with Donald Trump, the champions of abortion who opposed Donald Trump, but another group. When Donald Trump assumed the presidency, something strange took place that had never taken place in American history or across the world. There gathered witches under the moon to cast spells against him, just as witches would have been in a war against Jehu. When Jehu got to the capital city, he set out to destroy the temple of Baal, dismantle its cult. The government-supported cult of child sacrifice, he dismantled. So when Donald Trump got to the capital city, he set out to dismantle the government's support for child sacrifice abortion. Jehu pulled down the temple of Baal. The paradigm says when Jehu rises, the temple of Baal will fall. Now it turns out there has been an actual temple of Baal that has stood in the world since ancient times, surviving 2,000 years of world history. But when Jehu rises, the temple of Baal falls. The actual temple of Baal in the Middle East, standing for about 2,000 years, fell to the earth when, 2 months after Donald Trump began his rise, the American Jehu began his rise in the summer of 2015. The temple of Baal fell to the earth. Jehu rises, the temple of Baal falls to the earth. What about January 6th? Could there be a mystery behind it? There is so much controversy over this. There is so much between the parties here. Now, this is not to condone anything that happened, but to give revelation. At one point in the book of Kings, Jehu calls for an assembly in the capital city. Now, by the way, everything I'm sharing came true after I wrote the paradigm. It was a number of years after, but the template is in there. Jehu called for an assembly in the capital city. So Trump calls for an assembly in the capital city. There was in that day in Jehu's capital a great building, a great capital building, a great capital pagan temple. Well, there was in Washington a great capital building called the Capitol Building. It's also called the People's Temple, or the Temple of Democracy, or the American Temple. The people of Jehu in the template go down to that great Capitol building and surround it, and while proceedings are going on, Well, they get ready to do something. The people of Trump go down to that great Capitol building, surround it with proceedings going on, and get ready for something. Or some of them did. In the paradigm in the Bible, at the set moment, the people of Jehu stormed the Capitol building. The biblical account reads, "Go inside." On January 6, many of the people of Trump who surrounded the Capitol building, and then some stormed it, went inside. Now, there is so much to this and what it signifies, but to say this now. When the Capitol Police announced how many they had arrested in Washington that week, the on-site of those who were part of this or stormed the building on-site, it made headlines. 80 arrested for civil unrest at U.S. Capitol and around D.C. Metropolitan Police Department arrested 80 individuals in connection with the civil unrest at the U.S. Capitol. All right, 80 people. In the account of 2 Kings, it records a phrase to speak of those who stormed that ancient Capitol Temple building. The phrase is Shmonim Ish. It translates to 80 people. 80 people. It says in 2 Kings 10:23, now Jehu had stationed 80 men outside. Now there is so much more. You see, the temple of Baal was what enabled the Israelites to sacrifice their children. America has had its own temple of Baal that enabled it to kill over 60 million children. It was called Roe versus Wade. So the template ordains that the American Jehu will be instrumental in pulling down the American temple of Baal. Again, this was in the templates in the paradigm, but this came true later. Roe versus Wade is the American temple of Baal. And Trump, the American Jehu, would do so by appointing 3 Supreme Court justices. The American Jehu pulled down the American temple of Baal. As a man who was not a politician but a soldier, a fighter, Jehu would undoubtedly have been in the line of fire, a target of weaponry. And yet he would have survived. So Trump would find himself in the line of fire, a target, and he would survive. Jehu was an unlikely leader. He was imperfect. He was mixed. And yet he was the only leader of the northern kingdom of Israel whom the Bible commends. Trump is an unlikely leader, an imperfect, mixed person. And yet, in spite of that, no American president was more effective and successful in pro-life, in the cause of life, than he was. No American president or world leader had recognized Jerusalem as the eternal capital of the Jewish nation, the first world leader to do so since ancient times. The only American president responsible for the overturning of Roe versus Wade. The first American president to recognize the Golan Heights as belonging to Israel, which is part of biblical Israel. The first American president to inaugurate the Abrahamic Accords. The only American president to speak at the March for Life. He was the American president who most spoke for, sought to defend religious freedom. Just recently, Trump's life was almost taken. It missed taking his life by as little as 2 centimeters. Had he not turned his head to look at the screen at the last minute, at the last second, he would have been dead. Is there anything in the template connected to this? There is. Again, Jehu was a warrior. More than other kings of Israel, he would have been especially the target of physical attack. He was commander of war, of weapons, and in the line of fire. He would have survived it. Interestingly, Jehu was also linked to assassination. He's the one who assassinated evil rulers, and he also survived. But it was now as if forces of darkness were seeking to turn that against him and assassinate him. I first revealed these things in 2017 when I wrote The Paradigm. I was led to give Jehu, thus Trump, a title. I called him, Jehu, the Warrior King. And this is what you're going to see, one of the pages, the opening chapter of that chapter where I wrote of Jehu as the Warrior King. And that's what it was called. Trump, I wrote of as the Warrior President. But I never heard of Trump spoken of quite in those words until this summer when he was shot. And what the call that he issued, what happened after he was shot, the call to fight. That's the call of a soldier, a man of war. It was that event and that response that led people publicly in the news and on the web to refer to him as warrior. These are actual quotes. Donald Trump praised by stars as a warrior, man willing to give his life after assassination attempt. Trump just proved, these are quotes, Trump just proved that he is a pure warrior after his heinous assassination attempt. As I called Jehu the warrior king, look what Trump was actually called on television. Trump has a warrior president mentality. The warrior king. Is Trump perfect? Of course not. Is he imperfect? Yes. Is he a mix? Yes. Is he wild and unpredictable? Yes. It's not about him. It's ultimately about the ways of God. But so was Jehu. Again, we don't know where Jehu was at with God, but the thing is that God used him. God will use whom God will use. It's not about the person. It's about God. It's about the purposes. It's about things like life and other things. It's about the will of God. America is hanging in the balance, just as Israel hung in the balance in ancient times. In the days of Jehu, as it was then, there are gigantic differences between the stands of the two parties and the two candidates. Not about the people, it's about the issues. One, Kamala Harris, is radically for abortion, the killing of children up to the time of birth. The other, Donald Trump, is for life. One has in fact opposed legislation to protect babies born alive from being killed or left to die. One is radically for the transitioning or surgical mutilation of children and youth. The other is against that. The other is for saving the baby. One, along with her running mate, has been warned of, spoken of as a danger to free speech, and they have spoken of censoring free speech. One has sought to force Christians, Kamala Harris, to support the killing of babies forcibly, and pro-life pregnancy centers to force them to refer their people to go to abortion clinics. The other has pledged to defend religious freedom. Kamala Harris was championed and heralded at the Democratic Convention to nominate her for the presidency. But the one who walked in the footsteps of King Joram, and the one who walked in the footsteps of Jezebel, and the one who walked in the footsteps of Ahab, all of who were there, they were of the house of Ahab, which saw Jehu as an enemy. So at the convention, they all vilified the American Jehu, Trump. This is all according to the paradigm. This election is critical and will determine, for good or bad, good or evil, the future of this nation we call America. Now let me tell you something. We saw that Ahab reigned for 22 years. His antitype, Bill Clinton, was on the national stage until the end of his presidency, 22 years. Joram, we saw, was on the national stage for 12 years. His antitype, Obama, was on the national stage for 12 years. Jezebel was on the national stage with her husband, 22 years, on her own, 14 years. Her antitype, Hillary Clinton, was on the national stage with her husband, 22 years, on the national stage, 14 years on her own. What about Jehu? What about Trump? Trump is different. Most of his life was spent out of government, public life, but most of it was on the national stage, so it's kind of hard to pinpoint. Jehu was on the public stage as ruler for 28 years. So for Jehu, the key number is 28. His last year in power was his 28th year, the year 28. If Trump is reelected in the autumn as his second term, he can only serve 4 more years and no more. So the last year of the American Jehu will be the year 28, the year 2028. It'll be the 28th year. Now, does that mean that he has to be reelected? No, he has free will. America has free will to do, as do its voters, and does God's people. We all have free will. God has his will, his perfect will, his permissible or permissive will, and his redemptive will. We have a free will to pray or not to pray, to vote or not to vote. If we, all God's people, prayed and voted, America's future would be different, will be different. The rise of Jehu in ancient Israel, what did it mean? It represented a reprieve in Israel's fall from God and ultimately to judgment. It was a chance to turn back. Jehu wasn't the answer. It was just a window that opened up the answer. So with Trump. Which of the two futures will be America's future? On one end, you have a party and a platform and a candidate who are advocating the ways against God. Really, in terms of the Bible, in terms of ancient Israel, the ways of apostasy that led to judgment. You have a way that leads to judgment, the killing of babies, the going against God and his ways leads to judgment, calamity. Or the other is a reprieve for the chance of revival. What will be, which one will be America's future? What about Kamala Harris? All I will say is do not miss what I'm going to open up in the next video. Again, was Jehu the answer? No, Trump's not the answer. But God uses and provided a window for a nation to turn back. Now, the answer is not the man. The answer is not the window. The answer is what can happen through the window. Revival. That is the only thing that can save America. God allowed Trump to come within centimeters and seconds of death. Trump was within that, just right there, but God saved him. God can also save an America, a nation that is on the edge of calamity and judgment. But your prayers and your vote matter. If we don't vote, we bear the guilt for what happens. If we don't pray, we bear the guilt. Make a difference. You're the light of the world. God put you on earth for such a time as this. Impact your world. Impact your world. Touch. You have a vote. Use it. Spread the gospel. Pray for revival. If you're not registered, do it now. It's real easy. Something like vote.gov. Maybe we'll put it up. And most importantly, pray for revival, and let the revival start with you. The answer isn't a system or a party or a man. The answer is Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah, the light of the world, the glory of Israel, and the hope of these United States of America. For those in your life who need to see this, those who are going to vote, or those who just don't know, send them this link and hit like to make sure you don't miss the next prophetic video on the mystery of Kamala Harris and all the prophetic messages that are going to appear on this channel. Hit subscribe. The Dragon's Prophecy is coming out within days. To get your copy, or for those to get it for those in your life, go to wherever you get books. It's wherever there are books online, and you'll soon be able to get it physically. To get the Paradigm, the book that opens up this mystery and foretold these things, same thing. It's online wherever you get books. It's still coming true. And to get the free gifts, prophetic updates, see all my teachings and more, to be part of God's end time purposes, go to hopeoftheworld.org. The link's in the description. And until next time, with the mystery of Kamala Harris and what it actually means, this is Jonathan Cahn saying, be strong, my friend. Be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Shalom.